I was a little startled to realize that Casey's only been at Mayo since 2011. I feel like it's an extraordinary amount of work she's done in a very short time. It makes me feel like I should be getting to it a little bit more. I am really thrilled to be here with everybody. Rod, it was just extraordinary to get to hear your talk. A clinician designer sort of doing this type of work kind of makes my heart go pitter-patter. And Sir Gregory Smith, I'm so looking forward to your talk. We've been abuzz within Patient Revolution to see the ways that you've incorporated some of the language around Why We Revolt and within the Patient Revolution space into the work of realistic medicine. So this is a real honor for me. And I have the enormous privilege to look out and see so many people that I have been able to work with and for over the last 2 decades or more. And as a person, a kid who moved around a lot, to be able to kind of come back home to this group of people who taught me so much about what it means to work in healthcare is a real honor. As Casey said in my introduction, I'm a designer and researcher by kind of training and practice. That's what I do. And I have been working with the care unit or people in the care unit for over 20 years. And so I have been through the iterations, the shared decision making, the minimally disruptive medicine, care that fits, the movement for care, since its very early days, an enormous privilege of mine. And I now get the opportunity to serve as the creative and program director for Patient Revolution. I'm guessing that if any of you have gotten to connect with Victor, you've probably heard in some way about the Patient Revolution. He brings an enormous amount of enthusiasm to our work. And what I thought I would do in the time today, it's okay, it's correct, it's good. It's design. But thank you for checking, that's incredibly sweet. What I thought I might do today is give you a little bit of a deep dive into some of the programs that we offer within Patient Revolution, with the hope that maybe here at the beginning of the conference, sharing some of these ideas with you might be an opportunity to show you our arm and our hand extended, and there might be opportunities for collaborations, because that's where I think the enormous value would come. So the Patient Revolution is a little bit outside of probably where a lot of you sit. It doesn't sit within an academic institution, and it is not within a healthcare organization. It's a nonprofit or a charity or kind of in that space. And it is really designed to be a movement for care, to help support a movement for care. We sometimes refer to it as the organizational backbone. And really what that means is it's a gathering place for the people and the resources and the work that's necessary in order to support a movement for care that is really made up of all of us. Anyone who is touched by healthcare as a patient, as a clinician, as a staff member, as a caregiver, really all of us will trade out many of those roles over the course of our lives. And so everyone is welcome, and we encourage everyone to kind of become a part of the Patient Revolution. The idea of the Patient Revolution, when we spun it out as kind of its own nonprofit organization, it was really built on 2 kind of fundamental guiding principles. And those are kind of our touchstones, the things that we come back to again and again in the work that we do. One is the idea of care. If we're a movement for care, then what is care? And in our world, the way we talk about it, and I think what I saw come through so much in your talk, Rod, and I'm sure I know from the work of the group of the care unit comes through, is that care is really about noticing and responding. That can take many different forms, many different people. Within the healthcare space, that noticing and responding is often centered on helping patients address the situations that they find themselves in. But that noticing and responding is kind of core to the work. The other big insight that our community has had over the years that we've been working in this, and it came in a question that Rod got at the end, which I think is really important, is what does change look like in terms of the movement for care? And so I have been lucky enough to be a part of creating many different shared decision-making tools, conversation tools, different programs that exist outside of healthcare. And one of the ways that we talk about them within Patient Revolution is that each of those ideas, each of those projects or visions is kind of like a plant or a tree. And at some point, it grows outside your lab, and you take it and you plant it into a clinical practice in some capacity. And they often flourish for a while somebody's watching them and tending to them and watering them, and they've been given resources. They will continue to grow. But as soon as you start to look away, as the person moves on to another project, or the resources dry up, or they've been dedicated to a different strategic priority, the trees often start to wither. And that is an issue, a challenge that we've kind of seen within Patient Revolution. That is another one of our guiding principles, which is to understand, why do our trees die? And so we have come to define it, the way that we think about it is that it's the soil. It's not a bad tree. We've just planted that tree in an environment where it doesn't have what it needs to flourish. And so for us, we think about that soil as a combination of spaces, processes, policies, and the culture. And that if we want to grow big, beautiful trees, the ideas that are coming from your students and that come from many of the people in this room, we need to have better soil to plant them in. And that soil is the more formal kind of name we give for it is the conditions for care. So how do we kind of improve the conditions for care? So these two guiding principles really frame the work that we're trying to do within the Patient Revolution. And so with each of the things that we create, each of the programs we begin to kind of shape, we ask ourselves two questions. How does this help people in healthcare notice and respond? And how does this help replenish the soil? Or how does this improve the conditions for care? And so I have 4 projects that are programs that we currently have and have been working on that I wanted to share with you all as, again, possible opportunities for collaboration or leaping off points for different ideas and kind of visions of what you may want to do, as well as what we might be able to all do together. So these programs are our Foundations of Care course, which is available for everyone. Like I said, we're a very big tent within Patient Revolution. Anyone touched by healthcare is welcome and invited in, and our Foundations of Care course is for that community. We have also developed a course that we call Boards That Care. Again, a language thing a little bit. The boards is taken maybe from the term for governance structures in the United States, but really it's developing a program that we can bring to the people who are in that governance position to help introduce them to these ideas and to start creating some space for the productive friction that we like to try and generate within the Patient Revolution in order to move us towards the type of care that we want. What I've been terming kind of experience prototyping, so this is kind of taking a lot of the ideas that Ron mentioned, but Rod Rod mentioned, and that we can create spaces where we can be co-designing and trying out some of these interventions that are more directed at culture and policies and processes and physical spaces, so that we can invite more people into the conversation and hopefully move things a little bit further earlier in the process, before lots of resources have been added to it. And then we just recently, we had our kickoff meeting 2 weeks ago for working to create chapters of the patient revolution. And the chapters may be geographic, and they may also be what we're kind of call settings. So potentially health professional education might be a space where we would love to bring together people who are doing lots of different work and create ways for them to learn with each other and to connect in with the ideas that they're doing, again, in order to drive some change at these more conditions of care levels. And so I'm going to dive into each of these just a little bit more, just to give you a little bit more sense of it. So our Foundations of Care course is one that we developed because we have a particular language that we use within Patient Revolution, and we wanted to create a space where people could come and spend a little bit more time with that language and really begin to kind of figure out what it might mean for them. So our Foundations of Care course, it could be offered in a number of different ways, but right now it's a 4-week online course. It's mostly asynchronous, so you kind of go through the components on your own, but there is a discussion board, and there are a handful of community calls where we try and bring the whole cohort of maybe 25 to 35 people together for conversations. And that community of people is really self-selecting, but within each cohort that we have, you'll find clinicians, patients, caregivers, clinicians is our kind of broad word for anyone who kind of serves the needs of patients. But you will find researchers, designers, all kind of coming together and learning together with each other in a kind of facilitated frame. And it's broken down into these 4 modules. The first module is called Care and Healthcare. And really the purpose of this is to do this deep dive into our language, to explain what it is that we mean by industrial healthcare and what we mean by careful and kind care, and connect those ideas to these conditions for care that we've been talking about. And just to give you an example, we try and build in a lot of activities and sort of storytelling within the course. And so we have a activity in this module where we ask people to choose an industrial healthcare word and share it. What does that word mean? How might this word kind of impact our actions and shape the behavior within the healthcare setting, and then propose what we could use instead. So again, a way to kind of engage a little bit more with these ideas and begin to kind of see how so many of the invisible forces may really be kind of shaping what happens in a visit or at a time when a clinician and patient come together. Then we have a whole module on noticing. Which is really where we start to develop some of these practices around how do you look at stories and observations and elements of the kind of healthcare experience through a different kind of lens, where we explore what does blur look like, what does burden, cruelty, hurry, and inaction, which are all words that Victor helped bring to the table of Patient Revolution as a much more accessible and potentially kind of emotionally resonant way of thinking about healthcare experiences. And the same with the elements of careful and kind care around biography and biology, competent compassion, minimal disruption, responsive tempo. And we have, this is all rooted in storytelling. So we've collected a lot of different stories. I'm going to share one with you after I've kind of gone through this whole thing so you can get a sense of it. But the idea is to really have people speaking about their own experiences as a way for the learning to happen. And the members of the cohort also share their own stories. Our third module is called Responding, and here is where we introduce people to the possibility of what can be done beyond just, say, a clinician's response in a visit, but really thinking about different layers at the organizational level, at the influence level, as well as the kind of point of care level, and encourage people to do some brainstorming and thinking about what might action look like, what are the types of interventions you can create in some of these other spaces that would be designed to kind of address some of these challenges. And then our last module we call Mini Revolutions, which is our term of art for the work of trying to put together an idea or a project or something that you feel you or another small group of people can do to try and advance the work of careful and kind care. And so with that, I'm going to share this video with you, which is one of the videos that's in our Foundations of Care course. Whoops.
I never met her. She's a very fast talker, loud talker.
I'm just going to jump back real quick.
Just keeps talking to you.
There we go. Okay.
And basically my story is that I dealt with cystic acne for probably like a year. It was all over my face. And when I started going to my dermatologist, I never met her. She's a very fast talker, loud talker, just keeps talking your ear off, and you don't get a lot of time to put your own input in, ask questions, all those sorts of things. So I would go on different medications, not knowing much about them. None of them really worked. And then she ended up suggesting Accutane. At the time, my skin was still pretty bad, but it was starting to get better. I could tell from the previous medication that I was on. And so I started going through the whole process, which is kind of a big deal. You have to get blood drawn, pregnancy tests, like all forms of different consent and birth control. And so I ended up going through all of that. And then when I went back for the visit that I was supposed to start the Accutane, my skin was like very clear, but she was still like, I think we should go forth with it. All of your acne scarring and everything is still very prominent. Like, I think we should go forth with it, whatever, just droning on and on about I should go on it. And it's such a strong drug that changes so much, like mental health and just like the way your skin acts. So it's such a dramatic drug to be on that it's something that you really have to weigh. And so I was just sitting there with my mom and I was just like, I feel like my skin looks really good. Do I need to be going on this? And so I kind of like paused her after she was like talking about like all the things, how many times I'd have to come in during the month, all the blood tests I would have to do and everything. And I was just like, I feel like we should just look at my skin and see that it's like really helping a lot, like what I'm on right now, and maybe think about other options not going on this really hard drug. And so that's when I told her that, and my mom agreed, and so I never ended up going on it. And yeah.
So I think that's just, couldn't fit more perfectly into the idea of care that fits, right? And I think it highlights so many things. Just that this is a young person who could so clearly articulate their own experience. I think it's just a reminder that asking people is often one of the best ways to know if care has or hasn't happened. We do that as part of this course, and it's one of the biggest takeaways for me has been how easy it is for people to call up moment when they felt cared for and a moment when they didn't feel cared for. And sometimes they can be really long past, but they can recount it in such a way that I feel like I could write a script from it. And I think that really speaks to how powerful these moments are and how we could do more to use them as a way to learn and understand how the things that we're doing are impacting both patients and clinicians. We also in the course have stories from a number of clinicians as well, because one of the big insights that we've had around the course is how helpful it is for patients and caregivers to see the struggles that are happening on the clinician side as well. And then, of course, the clinicians being able to understand the experience of patients and caregivers more broadly. So that's our Foundations of Care course. I'll put in a little plug. We have another cohort starting November 3rd, and there's space, and you can sign up on our website. So if that's interesting to you, or if you'd like to talk about bringing it to a group of people that you're already connected in with, please reach out. There's very fuzzy lines on all of these things because the goal is really to find ways to bring it into the communities where it's going to be useful. So the second program that I mentioned is our Boards That Care program. And this really emerged out of, again, another insight that even working within a healthcare organization myself and hearing from other people, that there seemed to be kind of a ceiling on how far you could drive change. We should do this because it's the best thing for patients, and our clinicians would get you pretty far, but it couldn't get you all the way. And oftentimes the reason for that was our board won't let us, our leadership won't let us, or that's not the strategy. And so we started to think, what about if we bring these ideas to them and begin to have the people who are in charge of governance, who often don't have clinical backgrounds, and so may be nervous about those parts of the kind of work of stewarding healthcare, and give them a way to talk about care, because again, they have their own caring experiences and uncaring experiences, and they can bring that into those spaces. We did a very early prototype with an organization at the end of last year. Also in November, we're doing our next big version of Boards That Care with Dartmouth Health. But we have had interest and are excited to bring this model to other places to figure out how we might shape it for governance in outside of the United States, outside of kind of the board structure that we know in the United States. And so again, I think if this is something, if that insight about a challenge resonates with you, and you think there's an opportunity for engaging this population of people to try and address the culture and the policies that may be shaping a lot of the care that happens, I would encourage you to reach out. Just to give you one sort of small sense of what this looks like is, this is for part of the work that we're putting together, we made a list of what are the things that a board can do to try and advance careful and kind care. They can ask questions, they can change their language, they can influence the board composition by establishing bylaws that describe perspectives, skills, and experience needed on the board. They can contribute to the strategic plan and set expectations related to organizational structure and people-centered measures. They can model being a learning organization by assessing their own decision-making in relationship to the mission and success in creating a care-centered culture. And they can develop incentive plans to reward being a caring organization. So again, the purpose here is just to kind of create some space for that productive friction where we can start to imagine how we might shape those conditions of care in other spaces. We've also kind of recently embarked, one of the third ones that I noted was experience prototyping. And the idea here was really to We're kind of loath to use it within Patient Revolution because it carries so much baggage, but it is a version of kind of consulting that we've tried to engage in with partners who are very values aligned with what it is that we're trying to do. And so we started to make some tentative baby steps. And we think, especially early in a project's life cycle, there's real opportunity to kind of bring some of these questions that ultimately we've seen get decided later in the process with the answer that like, oh no, we can't change it and do that because we've already sunk too many resources into it. And so could we move that stuff earlier? And so that's what the idea is here. It pulls a lot on my early work, working with the care unit and with at Mayo Clinic, of kind of building and sharing and co-creating kind of collectively. It creates a space for debating and discussing possible futures, gaining confidence in your decisions, developing a shared vision with your partners, and minimizing conflicts prior to significant resource investment. Just to give you a little sense of it, we talk about it as kind of visualizing scenarios. So it might be a scenario around a policy or around processes, and you would start to imagine what that might look like and create a way for everyone to kind of come together and actually experience it, to play act it out, and to understand how changes at, say, the policy or processes level might actually impact what happens there. These are just some snapshots from very early work that we did, but building for spaces, building things out of foam core. We were really lucky, and the first job I had at Mayo Clinic in the Spark Innovation Program, we had our own clinical lab that we could play around with. So I would encourage that as well. But again, there are ways that we can, looking for thought partners about how we can do this so that we can advance some more of these ideas. And the last one about chapters, as I mentioned, we've just kicked off a small group, and one of the members of our group, who's also a fellow of Patient Revolution, is actually here, Ron Turker, in Paris, which is so exciting and kind of thrilling. But we want to create ways for our community to come together, and we're doing the work of teaching all of this small group, as well as ourselves, the work of organizing. And what does it mean to organize and kind of come together around change? We had our kickoff meeting last week, and we all got some homework. And the homework was to make a list of 10 people and to think about the story that you would tell them, to kind of bring them in. And these were some of the reflection questions about doing that homework. Who do you feel most accountable to in your community? Whose problems do you share? Who listens to me when I speak? Who do I have trust with already? And I immediately thought, oh, I'm going to Paris next week to meet up with a community that is the answer to all of these questions. And so it's very early days, but I wanted to bring that to all of you because this is the community of people who has shaped me and my thinking about this work and my practice since its very early days. And with that, our website, if you haven't read Victor's book, Why We Revolt, you can get your own signed copy on our website. Please reach out to me if you're at all interested, Maggie at patientrevolution.org. And thank you so much for your time.